All right, folks, just checking to make sure the recording's working. Here we go. Good morning. It's Thursday, and we are in engineering class right now through the magic of video. Okay, Mr. Dubik's in a silly mood. Any case, as we start talking today, we're hearing all this talk about pandemics and all this seriousness for the last three. And we're going to continue some seriousness, but maybe a little bit of a lighthearted take. The subject matter is serious, but it is also can be a little crude, shall we say. So, what is this fine lady looking like? She's in Victorian era, England. At that moment in time, one of the great cities on earth, a city of more than 1 million people. The only time there'd been a city this big was in ancient Rome at its height. And what she's looking at is that the water she's drinking out of the Thames, the river that served all the water for Great Britain. And the look on her face pretty much says it all. She's looking at that through a microscope. And it was known as the big smell of the big stink was happening about that time. We're going to come back to the Thames, and water quality is going to be a lot about what we talk about today. Now, if you say to yourself, what is engineering, water quality, pandemic? What are you talking about, Mr. Dubik? Well, what I'm talking about is cholera, another pandemic and disease that has been going on for hundreds of years. It's killed at this point in the millions of people. And it's also set people back. Sometimes you don't kill people, but you make them really sick. They can't work. It's hard on a society. It now impacts primarily third world countries because first world countries we've been able to engineer our way out of it. And I'm hoping that our goal should be to engineer so nobody's little kids have cholera. Okay. No eating or drinking. Abstain from cold water when heated, and above all, from ardent spirits. If have rendered them indispensable, take much less than usual. I like that. Above all, from ardent spirits, and if habits have rendered them indispensable, take much more less than usual. All right. It's a bacteria caused by severe diarrhea, dehydration, usually spread in water. This is the cholera right there. Cholera is fatal if not treated right away. Key symptoms are diarrhea and dehydration. Rarely, shock and seizures may occur in severe cases. Treatment includes rehydration, IV fluids, and antibiotics. All right, so it's a nasty bug, and it can kill you if you're not treated. Now, the good news is we do have treatments for it, but probably the best treatment is prevention. And the best prevention on all these things is to think about water quality and how we clean it. Now, that's been going on for some time. 1500 BC, the Greeks ran water through charcoal. And they could tell by smell and looks of it. And we still keep using modern charcoal, a modern filter containing charcoal. And there it is right over there, is some charcoal. I looked at the masks we were building and looked at charcoal. That doesn't really work on viruses, but hey, you gotta try, had to research it. Then 1300 years BC, the ancient Egyptians were using coagulants, alum, and they would put it in their water. And what that does is it causes all the particles in the water to clump together and sink in the bottom. In fact, we even have drawings on this. This person's adding alum here. This person's blowing air in there to mix it all up, and then they're boiling the water after they do it. When we go back to later in this lesson, we're going to come and think about this again. So there they are, they're adding alum, it coagulates, they're blowing air into it, it all sinks down, and then they heat it. But let's talk about ancient Great Rome, all right? We're going in the amphitheater. There's always the pictures of Rome. Big, impressive statues, few people talking. It's awesome, right? Well, and there's reason to think it was awesome. These are actual roads built by the Romans. We're still using them today. There's an old saying, and if you look at old maps, all roads led to Rome, and they really did. From France, what we now call France today, to all in the Middle East, to the Mediterranean, you can see all these roads, and they all went back to Rome. All right? One of the most famous things are aqueducts. And aqueducts are how they moved water in Rome. And those were very impressive. Up at the top here is where the water actually traveled. These are just open so they could scan this canyon, but the water would be actually traveling up here, all right? This, at the height of its city, there were 1 million citizens in Rome, and their water supply could provide 100 million gallons of water a day. Folks, this was 2,000 years ago. That's impressive engineering by today's standards, never mind way back in the day. So using the topless to move the water, they could get 200, and we'll talk about what that meant. So every Roman citizen was getting 100 gallons of water. So right up here, source of river cat, there's shuts where it drops. So if this is another way, so here's the water coming down the aqueducts in the system they make. They'd have drop shafts. It all also have inspection shafts, so you could see what the water is doing, so people up here could, tell you what the water flow is doing. And they knew it. They could give warnings. And then there's the aqueduct bridge, like we just saw. It goes over the top. If you had to go up a hill, you would siphon it. You would take it down. You'd make sure this hill's slightly smaller than that hill. You'd get siphon action to pull it back up. And then there would be an arcade where it starts to be distributed. This goes to fountains. It would go to the restrooms. It would go to the baths. So here's one of the baths. Would have been back in the day. Gorgeous, all that good stuff. You hang out with your family and friends. Very communal. And then here's the bathrooms. So you can see this young man singing in the bathroom. He's just sitting here in this picture. He's not using said bathroom. But they had openings on the top and openings on the bottom. So this is their toilets of the time. And then you see this tray right here? This is where they would have water to clean off their brushes. And their brushes would be underneath here, and it'd have a bit of a sponge. And after you did your business, you would dip that sponge in that bucket. You would take it, you'd wash it off in that trough right here, use it when you're done, put it back in the bucket that had bad wine or vinegar. Those were acids, they thought, to help clean them. Compared to everything else, very effective. Compared by today's standards, not so much. But it was better than the other option, and that was to just go wherever. And with that in mind, I've got a little video I want you guys to see. These videos are all pretty short. This is, I think, 5 minutes. So here we go. I want you to see this.
Welcome to How They Did It, a show where we take a look at the daily lives of our ancestors. Today we'll be remembering the wise words of Jurassic Park. When you gotta go, you gotta go. But what if you happen to be in ancient Rome? Well, if you have the patience of a man who takes a dump in the face of a T-Rex, then you can decide to just pretty much let loose immediately. And in doing so, you might find yourself in good company, as public urination and defecation don't appear to have been that much of an unusual sight in the past. Sound familiar? This is indicated by ancient signage and graffiti we find in cities like Pompeii. Here we discover such pleasant declarations as this one. Poop with comfort and good cheer, so long as you do not do it here. Or, if you poop against the walls and we catch you, you will be punished. And lastly, whoever refrains from pissing or pooping on this street, may the goddesses favor. Let's assume for the sake of discussion that you have better manners than this. Your next option might be to head home and use your own facilities. Generally, this means rushing to your chamber pot and going there. You squat down, do your business, and feel much better. Oh man, there's no way to flush. No problem. Just toss it out the window. No, but seriously, it appears that the contents of these chamber pots were often thrown into the streets. Better designed cities like Pompeii appear to have accounted for this and had high curbs with stepping stones to allow some degree of separation from the waste.
What they're saying there this would be so filled up with waste, you would step on these rocks so you wouldn't put your feet in it.
Eventually, it was expected that the overflow from fountains and rains would wash away the grime through gutters and into sewers. Yep, don't see that in movies too often. And it's pretty gross until you consider that it's not just what's below you, but sometimes you gotta worry about what's above you. This is stated by Juvenal in his satires, where he warns of such perils, stating that there's death in every open window as you pass along the night, obviously indicating that you might have an unexpected rain. Well, things do get a little bit better if you're moderately well off, and yeah, isn't that a lesson throughout history? Anyways, if you have the money and have the space at your disposal, all of a sudden your home might actually include a private latrine. Oh boy! This would generally consist of a stone or wooden seat set over a cesspit. These were often actually located by the kitchens, as there'd be other garbage that would also be thrown into the cesspit. Though it should be noted that this facility wasn't actually connected to a sewer or drainage system, and that actually there'd have to be some sort of slave or someone given this dirty duty, this dirty job you could say. Although there were actually...
He would have been called, in Britain, a night soilman. That's a night soilman.
People whose job it was to come by. These people were known as the manure merchants, and they actually came through and they cleaned out the contents in this cesspit, and they actually turned it into what was called night soil to then sell as fertilizer for agricultural farmers. So those are the real old school dirty jobs.
Now, hey, the only problem with night soil is you pass parasites back and forth that way. North Korea has got a problem with getting fertilizers, so they use night soil, that you term, and they believe that the parasite infestation rate is very high there, and we know this because of people that have fled to South Korea. So if you're going to use human waste as your fertilizer, you've got to treat it first. You know, and it's not, honestly, we have a history of using it and recycling it, but you need to treat it. You just can't throw it in your fields and use it because you can pass diseases.
Jobs. Okay, you're probably thinking at this point, come on now, we're in ancient Rome. This is supposed to be the height of ancient civilization. What do they have to offer? Well, drum roll please. The answer is a public bathroom. Woo! And actually, to our modern years, this doesn't seem very appealing, but back in the day, this was actually pretty luxurious. So these public bathrooms would generally be co-located with public baths or aqueducts, and that's because these facilities would have running water. And that is a huge bonus, something we take for granted nowadays. So in this case, individuals would actually sit atop wood or stone seats and go into a channel that was just below them. We even have remains of a pretty pimpin' chariot-style seat from the baths of Caracalla, so that's pretty cool. Next, you'd have constantly supplied water, which would flush away the contents into a nearby sewer. Such accommodations were pretty awesome by the standards of the day. They were even doubly so because they served as great places to socialize. Many of these luxury latrines would have seats one next to another, where individuals could chat, relax, and literally shoot the shit. Nonetheless, at the end of the day, regardless of your toilet selection, or lack thereof,
there's the sponge people used.
You're inevitably going to be faced with another decision. How do I wipe? And no, this isn't going to be a discussion of the correct toilet paper orientation. You'd be jumping the gun on this conversation by quite some time, as the first mention of toilet paper in the Western world comes from around the 16th century. China actually had some sort of toilet paper by the 2nd century BC, while Japan used wooden instruments around the 8th century AD. Other cultures, which did not use toilet paper, had to manage by other means. This might involve using water, leaves, grass, stone, animal furs, sticks, snow, seashells, or even hands. During the Greco-Roman period, a sponge fixed to a stick was often used to clean the butt after defecation. The sponge was then placed in a bucket filled with salt water and vinegar. Another technique involved using smooth ceramic fragments known as pissoi. In fact, we find many of these in the vicinity of latrines around the Mediterranean world. As for technique, one would do well to follow the example shown on this Greek wine cup. Squat down, raise your clothes, find your balance, and start your business. Apparently, there was even a Greek proverb for reference, which stated that 3 stones are enough to wipe one's behind. Yet this method was certainly not perfect. Irritations were sure to arise due to the abrasive surface, and it's hard to know when you were done. Horace alludes to such problems in his 8th epode, where he states, "A butthole at the center of a dry and old buttocks mimics that at the center of a defecating cow." Well said, my friend. And with that pleasant image, we will conclude our look at the bathrooms of ancient Rome. I hope you enjoyed. Oh, and in case you were wondering, the correct orientation is over. For more history, be sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel. This is a bit more of a goofy take, and we do actually have some serious history, but nonetheless, we hope it was enlightening.
Yeah, he did a pretty good job. All right, I give him that. Moments in. All right, now. So there's going to ancient Rome. But now we come to London. 1,500 years so later. Beautiful city, modern. Certainly, they've done something better. Certainly, they're not still having just waste going out the windows or doors. Actually, same thing. Same as what was going on in Rome. You wanted to live, if you lived up on top, everybody's crushed in together, squalid conditions, people underneath it. This might be a night Solomon for all I know, pulling the off the bottom. A lot of the poor, even though there were septic tanks, and what septic tank then was simply was a stone or brick, like pond, where all your waste and stuff got thrown in it. And then night Solomon would pull it all out. It wasn't like a septic tank today that treats it and releases it the proper way. So basically, we hadn't gotten any farther. We had the Middle Ages, probably forgot a lot, and then Rome. And Rome was, and then, then we have great London, and any major city, New York City would have been terrible. Any of these would have been appallingly smelly. Because not only you got human waste you're dealing with, you got a lot of horse waste. Remember carriages? Yeah. Woo. All right. So, all that waste, no way to remove it, not a good time, as we'll show you here. This is going to be a short video about cholera. We're coming back to cholera now. See if I can get this to start up.
London in the 1850s is a marvelous jewel of a city. It's also 2.5 million people crammed in a small city with no infrastructure. You had no big sewage system at that point. You had no waste management systems. So think about what would happen if you had a disease like cholera, which requires sewage and clean water mixed together.
The bacteria moves from the human body, but it can only survive if it gets into the water supply and it's transmitted through feces making contact with water. In London, you have a situation where no one knows why this disease is spreading.
In 1854, when there was this outbreak around the Broad Street pump, within a week or so, over 500 people died. 3/4 of the community had fled, so this was a very severe outbreak.
Cholera was this plague that ravaged through Western society that everyone ran from. Jon Snow was a risk taker. He was willing to put his life and his career at risk by going into places where there was cholera.
Jon Snow was one of the first epidemiologists, and what he decided to do was, using the scientific method, try to figure out what was causing cholera in the communities.
Jon Snow begins to construct a map, and he finds that the disease tracked with the map of the water supply of the city, such that areas that were supplied with similar sources of water were being affected, and the neighboring area, which didn't have the same source of water, were not being affected. You could track back this map, and the map looks like a star, and the star has a center, and the center was in his case, typically a water well, or a common water supply source. And thereby, he began to figure out that it must have been the water supply source that was causing this epidemic.
Well, it's the water that's making people sick.
Jon Snow convinced the local Board of Health to take the handle off the Broad Street pump and then bring that outbreak to a halt. And we continue to use all of these epidemiologic methods today.
By piecing together those clues like a detective, using information and science, he changed the course of infectious disease in the Western world.
All right. So, he's using a scientific method. We as engineers always love to hear that. I think that's awesome. But, and we were able to learn that was bacterium in the water supply. And so he knew to turn off the water, it would solve that. Which is great. And we started to learn how to track diseases that way. It's also good for you to realize that diseases in big cities were very common. There would be cholera outbreaks all through the colonies of the United States, for example. So, we were talking about this, so let's look at the sanitation of that time. Well, the sanitation of the time this is a card that John Hunt put out. They're nightmen and rubbish carters, or carriers, thinking about your rubbish cart. And they would come in your basement at night and take it out. And they had to work at night because people didn't want to smell it during the day. Also, what started to happen is by now the toilet actually works. And a little bit of trivia, it's called the John. You go use the John because the Queen of England at that time's grandson, I believe, was John who invented it. So they called it a John. One of the things they did on that. But the early ones worked okay. Newer ones work great. By the 1830s, if you're wealthy, you have a toilet. The problem is you don't have any plumbing to hook the toilet up to. And so it just ran right outside and into the Thames River. And that increased actually the amount of waste because now we have a lot more water because they're dumping everything in the toilet. And actually the Thames, in 1920, there used to be fishermen on there. There used to be salmon. That was the last salmon caught on that river in London. And within 10 years, there was no fishing. Everything was done. All right? So here we have the water cycle. And let's talk a little bit about water here. A little pause here. All right. There's a little bit of interruption there, but now we're all set again. Before we go much further on how we do this, I just need to remind you, and you've all at one time in your science have heard about the water cycle. Water evaporates from lakes and oceans, condensates, becomes clouds, rains, falls back down, usually up in the mountains, the surface run up. We get this whole cycle. And what we're saying is it evaporates, it goes into clouds, some water from plants, and then either snows or rains. Mainly it falls in the ocean, or it's frozen. If it falls in the ocean, we really can't drink it. So, there's only about 2%, 3% of the water that's out there right now that we can actually drink. Most of it's salt water or locked up in the glaciers. And then you have water we can access in groundwater or lakes. What's really important to think about water cycle, you see these guys? We share the same water they used. You drink water that the dinosaurs swam in. We don't make water, folks. It's just constantly being reused. In a long sense, my guess, one of your great challenges of your generation will be the water shortages. We waste water, we have growing populations. That's where future conflicts are going to be over water. All right, so let's take a quick look at Charlotte's water, shall we? This is the Catawba River. If you look on a map, Catawba River really becomes Lake Norman, Lake Wadley. It's all part of the Catawba River chains. We blocked it up, we dammed it up, we made it. If you have a water treatment plant, we're going to get into that in a minute. We treat the water so we can drink it. All right? You can't just drink it straight out of the river. You get sick immediately. And that's not not because it's polluted or something. It's because simply there's bugs in it, there's some dirt in it, some human waste, which you could get a cholera outbreak, I suppose, if the levels get too high. That's one thing they watch when they warn you not to go swimming is the bacteria levels are high and they're afraid you're going to get sick. So in any case, so then the water goes up here and we're going to talk a little bit more about water treatment and then wastewater treatment, but it goes up in a pump. We pump it up into a big water storage. The reason they do it that way is they pump it all the way to the top. They do it at night. They get cheaper rates from the power company, and then it all comes down during the day. And you're not trying to pump it. You're trying to get ahead of that curve doing it. Now, as you use the water, it goes in our water hydrants, it goes to our house. Well, if it goes to our house, we use it. It comes out of the house, hopefully goes through the wastewater, through our pipes, to wastewater treatment back in the river. The other thing you have to deal with when this is going on is, and it has to do, is when rain, if we have sewer pipes, take the wastewater treatment in, the sewer pipes will take in the water that when it rains hard. That can overrun, if you get a lot of storm water, you can overrun your wastewater treatment plant. And water going right into stormwater goes right into the river, which, you know, a lot of fertilizers, a lot of herbicides is messing up the river. All right? And here's something to remember. This is at Lake Norman where water is. Guess what? Hickory used that water and they treated it and sent it down to us. And we're going to treat ours and we're going to send it down farther south. So we're all reusing that water again. And so just so you know that we have to treat it. We're going to get into how we treat it in a moment. We're going to have to treat our waste because we're all sharing this water and we're not making any new water. All right, now, water treatment. Let me just describe, because we only had, so much time in this. The ideal thing is we all get in a bus 6 feet away from each other, so it'd have to be a very long bus, and filtration system so I could show you, but we can't. Water's pulled from Lake Norman, Mountain Island Lake. That's just, if you have Lake Norman, Catawba River keeps going, it forms another one called Mountain Island Lake. I still run that. And then it goes to Lake Wiley. All right, we pull it from there. It's stored, it's several days it's stored and sitting there. And it's stored so the water separates and the solids start to fall out of it. So as much as you can, get the water, you make sure there's no leaves in there, etc. And then during this, you add alum. Whoa, wait a minute. You just said alum, Mr. Dubik. I thought the Egyptians were talking about that. Yeah, same stuff. You add it to the untreated raw water. When mixed with it causes tiny particles of dirt to stick together, coagulate. And then if you pattern this all around, it coagulates and becomes flock. So basically, let me go back up here. What these guys are doing right over here, and gals, add alum, blow it around, and then start having it sink through there. And sometimes they would boil the water, so they would treat it in addition. Well, guess what? That's what we would do here. Then, so all that water's tied in. We're trying to get all the garbage out of it to sink to the bottom. The water and the flock particles moved into sedimentation basins where the heavily flock particles settle to the bottom. We get rid of those. From there, a bunch of filters to clean it all out. And guess what they're using? Sand and carbon. Same as charcoal. Same as you use in your aquarium. Same as the Greeks were doing. And then, we make sure our water isn't corrosive, so they add things in there. That becomes a big, huge problem in some cities now where they didn't realize they were just slightly acidic water, which was ruining the pipes. All right. Fluoride is added to protect your teeth. Chloride is to kill any germs or contaminants and to keep water disinfected while it's pumped through 12,000 miles to reach our customers. I've got a graph here. I just realized I didn't put it in my slides. I'm going to pull it right up here if I can. Yeah. What I would like to show you, I'll show you in the start of our next lecture, next time I talk. I can't get to it right now. you should see the rate of diseases as we started quality of water increasing. So I will show you that in the next one. All right, now let's talk about this. So that was fresh water. That's a clean water treatment. Now we're going to talk about wastewater treatment. And wastewater treatment is pretty busy. We'll come to that all in a minute. I'm going to explain it in a second. But basically, out here, when you flush that toilet, when you throw it down the sink, it's out of sight, out of mind, is the old saying, right? Well, the reality is, it didn't disappear. It is going somewhere. So the only thing you put in the toilet is water, liquids. You don't put anything else in there. Don't put those wipes down. They're messing everything up. All right. So first thing they do is they get rid of the grit. Think of a big screen. All they're doing is they find everything in there. You found guns in there. One story goes, Charlotte Mecklenburg, we used to visit the water and wastewater treatments. And what we found is they would, some guy found a whole suitcase of money. Money had been thrown there, apparently trying to avoid being caught with said money. Who knows? All right. So what you have is physically you try to move things, and then what we're going to do is start separating things. We're trying to get to the effluent. This is the liquid part of this. So in aeration, whereas the solids, more of the sludge goes up in here. So in there, we just talked about that night soil you can use to recycle, but you've got to put it through a treatment center. So if you're going to try to reduce, you're going to use bacterium again, living things, and you're going to reduce that sludge down as much as you can. You're also trying to get rid of the water and the sludge. So you remove as much of the water as you can, then it's loaded into a truck, and it's used by farms. All right? Used as soil amendment or granite fertilizer for crops not destined for human consumption. Well, okay, not directly. If you're doing field corn, I grew up on a farm, which you feed the cattle, and you're using this stuff, then okay, the cattle eat it. Then we eat the cattle. So I'm not sure I think they say that because people all suddenly start to freak out. Anyways, and remember what I said, water made or destroyed? All this stuff keeps getting reused. So over here, the liquid that we want to get back in the river with our cute little duck down there is they have aeration basins. Air circulated, pollutant removed dissolved pollutants, phosphorus and nitrates. They have a secondary one. Again, treated some more. Secondary ones might be getting us a particular chemical out of it, depending on what the wastewater needs are of that community. And then they do a little more filtering to get rid of the very tiny particles, and then they'll either use chlorine or UV light, and they'll disinfect it one more time before it goes back into the river. But you can see, we do all these treatments. This is why when our sewer systems get over flooded, this all raw sewage just goes right into our waterways, which causes a problem. So you can see these systems are huge. All right, somewhere in here, like in Charlotte's, their big filtering system, they'll have screens. Here's the wading pools. There's where the effluent goes. They have trucking so you can get things in and out of here. So I just want you to get the sizes. Don't worry about knowing what each one is. It kind of looks like pots of paint. That's a building. Look at the sizes. All right. So just real quick, here's your wastewater. You have a screen. You get coarse debris removal. Get rid of sand and grit. You're spinning it. You're trying to sink it down. Solid sludge just goes down. We're going to liquids what's called effluent. It's going through here. We heat it with air. There's bacteria that that feed on stuff. We kit them with a bunch of air. We still are some more sludges we're coming through here. Once it's all effluent, we hit it with chlorine, ultraviolet light, any other nutrient removal. We've got to be careful. We use a lot of fertilizer. That gets in the water, and then you put too many nutrients in the water, you get algae blooms, which then the plants really grow. If they grow well on ground, you put the same nutrients in the water, are going to grow there, but then that can choke out for the fish. So We have to treat everything we're doing. And then you have sludge digesters down there, and then we take the sludge off we just mentioned in Charlotte. We're using it to recycle with. All right. I know I'm showing you several different ways on this, but we're going to watch a video now on this. It's a pretty good video, and you can kind of see what we're doing. Now, I'm not really crazy about burning methane off because of the climate. We'd rather catch as much of that methane as we can, don't waste it. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and show this video. It's another short video. It's not very long. It's 5 minutes.
It's a topic we'd rather not think about. Where does last night's dinner go when we flush it down the drain? While you may already be grossed out just thinking about it, this question leads way to a significant subset of civil engineering and a massive amount of public funding. Just like all dogs go to heaven, all drains in the city lead to a wastewater treatment plant where that wastewater gets turned back into water that we can drink. Now, you may be thinking that you'd rather just let bygones be bygones and not think about this nasty part of your life. But here's the thing. Chances are you drunk water that was waste at some point, so you might want to take some time to understand this engineering process that makes dirty water clean. Here's where it starts. The toilet. Once you're done doing your business and flush that magical handle, your waste ends up at the inlet of one pretty interesting place, a wastewater treatment plant. Why is this place so interesting? Because it takes arguably one of the most disgusting substances in the world and turns it back into something that is essential to all life. Flushing just your toilet at halftime may not seem like a big deal, but when you couple it with thousands, if not millions, of others doing the same, it can result in some pretty high sewage flow rates. New York City has an array of 14 wastewater treatment plants that handle a combined 1.3 billion gallons of wastewater daily. That's enough wastewater to fill the Dead Sea with pure sewage in just 8 years. And that's just New York City. There are an estimated 14,748 treatment plants in the U.S. alone that 76% of the USA's population relies on, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers. Understanding wastewater is crucial to understanding the critical infrastructure needed to support modern life. That brings us to the first step of the process that handles larger items in sewage, things like flushable wipes, 2x4s, toys, or even guns. You name it, and it's probably been caught in a bar screen. Bar screens are exactly what you would think. They are large vertical bars that stand at the inlet of nearly every wastewater treatment plant, designed to stop larger items from getting to the plant and hurting machinery like pumps. This first process where bar screens are used is commonly referred to as pretreatment. The sole intention of pretreatment is to remove the outliers in the sewage and make the whole mixture a little more homogeneous or slightly less chunky. Bar screens are typically mechanically raked at certain intervals depending on the flow rates of the water treatment plant, although some older plants will still have more manual removal processes. Whatever is removed from the bar screens is then sent off to your average landfill or solid waste handling facility. Or, in the case of unusual items such as guns, they're sent off to the evidence locker in a police station to be investigated. Next up is the grit chamber. Grit chambers are the next steps in the pretreatment process following bar screens. Since these bars don't catch everything, larger particles called grit still need to be removed from the sewage as it is made even more homogeneous. As the sewage flows into the grit chamber, the velocity of the rather viscous sewage is adjusted to allow for particles of sand and rock to settle out. This is needed because these particles can't be removed using chemicals, and they could potentially clog or destroy pumps later on in the process. There are 3 types of these chambers: horizontal grit chambers, aerated grit chambers, and vortex grit chambers, which all accomplish the same task using slightly different methods. Following the grit chambers, the sewage will move on to the primary treatment process, which starts with a large basin called a primary clarifier. Primary clarifiers and clarifiers in general function on the principle of settling velocity. This term can be defined simply as the speed at which a particle settles. For wastewater being pumped into clarifiers, it's important that the flow rate of the water being pumped in doesn't exceed the settling velocity of the particles trying to be removed. In order to accomplish this, engineers will vary the size and number of primary clarifiers in accordance with the plant's permitted sewage flow rate. This ensures that at varying flow levels, solids can settle out of primary clarifiers to the correct quantities. At this step in the process, the slightly treated wastewater, which is referred to as effluent, is free of solids larger than 10 micrometers and should be all organic matter, which will be treated further. The top layer of the clarified water flows over a weir wall and into the next basin in the process, called the aeration basin. Now begins the process of secondary treatment, the sole focus of which is to significantly degrade the biological content of the sewage. In many cases, this process starts with aeration basins. Effluent flows into the aeration basins, at the bottom of which are hundreds, if not thousands, of tiny air blowers that create bubbles through the water. The water is pumped into this tank along with something called return-activated sludge. You can think of return-activated sludge as a bunch of happy little bacteria that get to eat their favorite foods all day long. This introduction of significant amounts of bacteria along with the massive amounts of oxygen injected from the bubblers creates an environment perfect for the process of aerobic digestion. Summarized simply, it's the breakdown of organic matter along with the use of excess oxygen. Some older plants will add in another step.
They have this step right here Charlotte has.
Before aeration basins referred to as biofilters or trickling filters. Found in many older plants, these filters essentially trickle the effluent over a medium like stone or plastic and allow for a film of bacteria to chow down on any organic matter in the water. This step is largely not used in newer plants due to more efficient and effective modern processes, but for plants with basins.
Translated, there's no smell. This has smell. So the one, there's a water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant right near South Park. If you go over there now, everything's covered, so you won't smell it. The one that's down south near Ballantyne, occasionally you will if the weather conditions are right, just slightly smell something. So you don't see these as often. If it's out in the community, far away from everybody, you might still have it.
Already installed, many still use them because they won't benefit the treatment process in most cases. Following aeration basins, the effluent along with much of the sludge is pumped into a secondary filter or clarifier where some of the sludge is removed and pumped back into the aeration basins as the return-activated sludge. Further settling of larger particles is also accomplished in these basins, as it is the final step of the process that will remove solids and larger biological matter. Water flows out of secondary clarifiers over a nearly identical weir wall to the primary clarifiers and moves on to the disinfection process. At this point, 85% of all organic matter is removed from the water and the effluent should be safe to drink in most cases, although you probably wouldn't want to. Disinfection is the final step of the process and is usually accomplished in one of three ways, either through chlorine, ozone, or ultraviolet disinfection. Each process has its benefits and drawbacks, with each being used commonly throughout the wastewater treatment process across the world. Chlorine disinfects the water through chemical disinfection. Chlorine, which you can think of as concentrated bleach, is added to the effluent here to kill off any remaining bacteria and organisms still living in the water. When chlorine is added to kill off the bacteria, it then has to be removed before it can be discharged, as to not kill off anything in the discharge location. After this, the water is safe enough to discharge into a stream or lake. Ozone disinfection is another method of disinfection that involves pumping an electrical current through the water that causes oxygen molecules, O2, to disassociate and combine with a free oxygen molecule, forming O3, known as ozone. Ozone is an incredibly strong oxidant and causes microbe cell walls to leak, rapid cell decomposition, and overall damage to cells. In other words, it kills off bacteria. The last
One of the reasons we don't like us taking in a lot of ozone.
method uses ultraviolet light to scramble bacteria's DNA so that they cannot multiply. In UV disinfection, the bacteria in the water aren't killed, rather they're sterilized, rendering them harmless. If you were to ingest water with living microbes immediately following UV treatment, any harmful bacteria would be unable to multiply or render your body damaged. Engineers choose between these methods based on a variety of factors such as flow rates, cost, and location of discharge, which brings us to the final step, effluent release. Effluent release exists in one of two forms. In most cases,
Before the effluent release, there might be another treatment. We're now doing things, some water, wastewater, we're dumping a lot of hormones into the water, so there's thought and medicines, and we're seeing fish downstream mutating. So there's a lot of reason to think, you know what, we need to treat it in some other ways now too.
The now treated water is released back into a stream or lake or other water source. In rare cases, usually in areas where water is scarce, the effluent discharge from a wastewater treatment plant can be discharged into another treatment plant directly where it will be treated further for consumption. This is referred to as full cycle water reuse. From a chemical perspective, the final drinking water is the same as normal treated water that flows through your pipes now, but due to the connotation of your drinking water being sewage just days before, this treatment process is normally shied away from or not heavily publicized. The entire process of wastewater treatment takes on...
And that's just plain ignorance. I know we don't publicize it. Nobody in the United States would say, oh yeah, we're taking the wastewater, we're going to treat it, except when there's droughts in Texas. And the minute you tell the public this, everybody says, oh, I don't want to drink that water. Oh, folks, go back to the picture of the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs went in that water. You're drinking water the dinosaurs bathed in. If we treat it, when it comes out, we treat it again. And before you tell me about bottled water, everybody, they're buying usually bottled water that's bought from some water source, and they'll either treat it maybe a little bit more or add a little bit of minerals to give it a slight taste, but they're drinking the same water you and I are drinking. It's the same quality. They might remove filters, remove the chlorine out so you don't taste that and change the taste, but the water, there's no demonstrated evidence at all that it's any safer.
On average, 24 to 36 hours from when a drop of water enters to when it leaves. Each wastewater plant will receive a permit for flow rates, chemical levels, and effluent quality, among other things, from the EPA that outlines the necessary treatment for a plant. Wastewater plant operators will make adjustments to a plant's operation and constantly measure levels to ensure proper discharge and proper treatment. Without these operators and the dirty job that they do around the clock, our sewage would always stay sewage, and sanitation in modern cities would be much, much worse. Wastewater treatment is...
Think Great Britain, think Rome, think New York City, all in 1880s horse if we didn't have this kind of technology.
An essential dirty job, and you can thank the 14,748 treatment plants in the U.S. alone for not having to worry about what happens to the blood.
All right, that's really important. You as an engineer, think about wastewater treatment. It's not a sexy job. It's kind of, ooh, think, hey, who wants to do that? Well, you're making sure the city of Charlotte, as great as sanitation, is not getting diseases. If you're on the water treatment where you're treating it before we drink or once we get done with it. And maybe the people of Charlotte don't appreciate that you made the wastewater treatment as much. I guarantee the people farther down the river do. I appreciate what the folks in Hickory are doing because the water I'm drinking in Charlotte is there. All right. If you go into Engineers Without Borders, that's a great organization. I encourage you to do it in college. You go out and help people. Whenever you do service, I think you're starting to learn by now, you always get more out of it than you put into it. Well, Engineer Without Borders, a lot of their work is in sewer systems that are getting going on to help prevent disease. Prevention is always cheaper than the cure. Now, let me show you, and again, just summary what's going on. Here's the waters coming in. We have big physical filters, grab everything. They showed a handgun. They showed anything you can imagine they found in there. Wedding rings, all kinds of stuff. All right, now, we then start to pump air into this, and there's where the primary treatment is. And we start separating. What all we're trying to do in that primary treatment is get things separated. All right? We want the sludge, go into sludge digestion, and we dry it out, treat it, and then we can reuse it. We can also burn it as methane. The other primary thing you're doing is the effluent. We get the effluent in here, we pump in oxygen. This is why we're stirring things around, we're pouring air in there, just like our ancient Egyptian friend. And that's the bacteria mixing with it. Then we go to a second treatment where it really just does that again. And we'll treat it with different things as we get going. And then finally, which doesn't show it, once we get it down to effluent, that's pretty good. We just want to make sure there's no bacterial outbreak. So we can hit it one of three things. You can hit it with chlorine, you can hit it with ozone, you can hit it with UV light. Interesting thing is UV light doesn't really kill the stuff, but it renders them harmless. All right, now, last comment on the matter. I want you to see this video. Our guy, Mr. Gates, Bill Gates, talking about you.
I want to talk to you today about toilets. In rich countries, you just take the toilet for granted. It's magical that there's a sewer system bringing water in, taking away the waste, and then it all gets cleaned up in a processing plant. However, for the poorest 2.5 billion in the world, they don't have this. It's unaffordable. We can't build that for everyone in the world. Some of the poorest, their toilet may look like this, a pill latrine. The waste here is not processed. It's still going to get out into the community. They smell terrible. But everybody should have great sanitation. A toilet in their house that's comfortable and doesn't smell awful. Not only is a toilet make your life comfortable, getting rid of that waste is key to human health. It's unprocessed waste that causes most of the diarrheal diseases. It ends up with lots of kids being malnourished. So how do we solve this? Well, some scientists that I work with said that we should challenge the world to come up with a way of taking the waste and processing it locally. We call it the program to reinvent the toilet. Several reinvented toilets are being tested right now in Durban, South Africa. Durban's a good place to run these tests because the city is growing fast and many people there don't have modern sanitation, which means that even if they have access to a toilet, the waste can get into the environment and make people sick. A typical toilet needs water, but many of the new approaches don't require any water at all. Some of them don't need electricity either. Others run on solar power. All of them remove the pathogens from the waste. And most importantly, they don't have to be connected to the city sewer system. I'm optimistic that eventually we'll find approaches that make great sanitation available to everyone.
All right. So, just finishing up. Again, starting Facebook, that's a sexy engineering problem. Manufacturing Teslas, very cool. But finding a really great toilet like that will save thousands upon thousands of lives and raise the living conditions of many, many people. Also, you don't have to worry about somebody living in another country. You can worry about your own area. I'm going to encourage you to think about civil engineering. Okay? So that's all I've got. I hope you have a good Thursday. Thank you very much. And in fact, let me see one thing here. Let's see how long this, I want to pull up a part of this. Okay, it's not showing what I wanted to see. All right, watch for what the homework's going to be. It's most likely just going to be a survey today, okay? And on a final note, yesterday we now have produced over 3,500 face shields. We will probably produce 50,000 shields in the next 2 to 3 weeks. All right, bye-bye.